5 victory points for destroying an infantry unit with a starting strength of 20 models? Just take 19 boys! Whoa! Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fast. Old Big Mek here, and in this episode we're talking about Battleline, troops, and the new Pariah Nexus Mission Pack. Let's get into it! Alright, so the main focus of this video is going to be some of the new changes coming with the Pariah Nexus Mission Pack. For those of you that aren't so much up on the competitive Warhammer 40K scene, what it is starting in 10th edition, well actually a couple editions ago, but they had these mission packs, and that's how you played the game. There were different sets of missions. You'd pull these cards out, primary missions, secondary, objectives, gambits, all sorts of things. Ever since 10th edition dropped with the Leviathan box last summer, we've only had the Leviathan mission pack. They're the ones that came in the launch box. Well, now, a year later, we're getting the Pariah Nexus mission packs, and everything is all new, and it shifts the focus of the game and the meta and the way it's played. Now, old Big Mek has been very transparent that he's not the most competitive player in the world anymore. Back in the day of 3rd, 4th, 5th edition he was, but, that was 20-something years ago. But there are definitely some tactics that still hold true, and this whole Pariah Nexus thing is a callback to the old school troops of yore. You see, back in the heady days of 2nd edition, that's when Warhammer 40K first became from a role-playing game to a tabletop game, but it still very much had RPG roots, and, well, you see that in the army selection. You get up to 50% of your points in command, which in those days was all special characters. It was very much hero hammer. All that went out the door with 3rd edition and the start of the first indexes. You see, when the 3rd edition launched, there was a brand new rulebook, and there was an index in it for every single army, and there was this brand new concept that was called the Force Organization Chart. Now, so all of your standard missions that were in the rulebook used this Force Organization Chart, and you can see here there's 3 units that are bolded, so 2 troops and 1 HQ. That was the bare minimum you had to have to be an army, and then you could take up to 6 troops, up to 3 fast attack, up to 3 heavy support, up to 3 elites, and only up to 2 HQs. And that was the standard for 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, 6th edition. So for the great majority of Warhammer 40,000's existence, the Force Organization Chart was how you built an army. And even when you got into 7th and 8th and 9th with detachments, those detachments, this basic one was still the basic Force Organization Chart, and then you'd have these different detachments that allowed you to take like 6 fast attack choices, for example. Now in 10th, it's completely wide open. You could take whatever the heck you want. There is no such thing as fast attack, heavy support, troop, elites, and HQ anymore in the way that there was back in the day. What we have now is called Battleline, and Battleline is simple. There are certain units that are considered Battleline for every army, and those units you are allowed to take 6 copies of instead of 3. So that's kind of how the Force Organization Chart still kind of exists, is with these Battleline guys. And they just got a lot more important in Pariah Nexus. So the new Pariah Nexus Mission Pack gives 5 mission rules to Battleline units. So these are rules that only apply to your Battleline, your very basic troops, your Imperial Guardsmen, your standard tactical squad, your regular boys, etc., etc. You look on the data card on the bottom in the keywords, it will say Battleline. But anyways, those 5 mission rules are swift action. So that is Battleline units can perform an action even after advancing or falling back. That is huge, because performing those actions is how you score victory points and how you win games. It's not just about blowing your opponent off the board. You have to actually perform the mission as well. So for you to be able to take your basic troops and run them up the board with an advance, or fall back from an unfavorable engagement and still perform that action and score those victory points is going to be massive. There's also stalwarts. That's Battleline units are still eligible to shoot if they perform an action, and can perform an action while within engagement range of enemy units. So again, that's two more different things that you're adding onto these. So engagement range, meaning, hey, we're in close combat here, I can still perform an action. And also, if I perform an action, I can still shoot. Like, that's really amazing. You can take your, intercessor squad and, pop them on the objective, perform the action, and still shoot with them. You can use your Imperial Guardsmen, launch their heavy weapon, etc. So really, really good, strong, powerful rules. There's also rapid escalation. So that is in the first battle round, players can set up battle line units from strategic reserves and reinforcements in the step of their movement phase. So basically, it's a way to get kind of reinforcements on that first turn, because normally it's only the second. There's raised banners, which at the end of each player's turn, the battle line unit from the army is in range of an objective marker they control. You score 1 VP, and you can no longer raise a banner on that marker. So that puts 5 to 6 secondary VPs up for grabs, depending on which mission is going on, that only the battle lines can do. It doesn't matter how much objective control you have or your opponent has. The raised banners rule is specific that it has to be a battle line unit. So again, huge things. There's also prepared positions, which is where battle line units that are targeted with go to ground and heroic intervention for 0 CP. You don't have to spend the command point to use the stratagems. Those are cool. Now keep in mind those mission rules are random most of the time. A regular game of 40k, you like draw 2 out of the deck kind of mechanic thing. There are certain missions that will specify that those are the mission rules for the mission. It's not necessarily random, but still the fact that 5 of the mission rules specifically only target battle line means you need to be tailoring your list to have as many battle line units as you can in your army so that you can take advantage of all these rules and actually score the victory points and win the game. Then you get into your primary missions and your secondary missions. There are 18 new secondary missions, and again, most of the time they are random. Again, we don't actually have the packs in hand yet. They just went on pre-sale or on order last weekend. A few of the bigger YouTube channels and things like that have gotten their hands on early versions of them and have shared some things, but by no means do we know 100% of everything. But we do know, based on how Leviathan worked, that some of the missions you randomize things, and there are some grand tournament missions and things like that where they are like, these are the ones you get. But one of the new secondary missions that's really interesting is called Cull the Horde. That is, every time you destroy an enemy infantry unit with a starting strength of 20 plus or more models or 25 or more wounds, you score 5 victory points. Now, this does not include attached leaders. Now, this is extremely interesting. Obviously, Green Tide is fantastically powerful for the orcs, and we take 20 boy squads for that. And so suddenly you're going, oh, all of these big 20 boy squads that I'm taking, because now I need to take all this battle line, I'm going to take 120 boys and 120 beast snagga boys. Those are worth 5 victory points each, and that's not good. Well, you can take an understrength unit, you pay the same amount of points, but you only take 19 models. Now the rule doesn't trigger. So some people are saying, obviously there's going to be an FAQ coming out about that immediately, a day 1 patch fix, whatever you want to call it, except for these little guys right here. That's why Mr. Standard Infantry Guardsman has been standing out here the whole time, is the Imperial Guard regular bog standard battle line troop unit is 10 models, or you can take 20 models for double the points, right? However, in your options, you can take a heavy weapons team, and that makes it where 2 models become 1 model of a heavy weapons team, like so. This just so happens to be exactly how all of my infantry squads are built and equipped, because, well, 10 flashlights isn't going to do you a whole lot, but 9 flashlights and a las cannon suddenly has some teeth to it. So when you take a 20-man squad, infantry squad of Imperial Guardsmen, and they have 2 heavy weapons teams, you have 18 models, right? So how are you going to patch that? How are you going to day one, do that kind of thing? So they might bring it down to 15 plus models, but we don't know. But again, that's a whole lot of hand wringing and gnashing at the teeth for one of 18 random secondary missions. But it is something you should be aware of. Now, the last little bit we're going to talk about are these new secret missions. So in the Leviathan pack, you had Gambits, which is, hey, I'm losing this game on points. I need something crazy. You could pull out this card and go, okay, I'm going to try this crazy honking thing. And if it gets off, then I get a bunch of victory points. And maybe, just maybe, you could snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Well, they've gotten rid of Gambits. They've replaced them with secret missions. But the effect is kind of the same, right? What you're doing is you've got something that you know that your opponent doesn't know, and you are trying to achieve that so that you can score points. There are 4 of them. Command insertion is have your warlord in range of 1 or more objective markers in your opponent's deployment zone. So obviously fast armies, your Drukhari, maybe even a few of your orc ones. If your warlord is say your beast boss at Squigosaur or something like that, you can get your warlord downfield. You can score that. There's Shatter Cohesion, which is your opponent has no units on the battlefield, or if they do, those units are either battle shock below half strength or more than 3 inches away from all objective markers. You're tabling your opponent. I mean, frankly, if you're going to table your opponent, you should get points for it, right? That is a good one. There's Unbroken Wall, which is you control 3+ objective markers not within your deployment zone. So that means you've gone out into no man's land and into your opponent's zone and taken over all of those objectives. And then the last one is War of Attrition, which is 1 or more, again, battle line units from your army is in your opponent's deployment zone, and they have no battle line units on the battlefield, or if they do, none of them are within their deployment zone. So if they do move out, say their secret mission is the Unbroken Wall, and so they're moving all of their battle line units out so that they can get all those objectives in no man's land in your deployment zone, and then you sneak one of yours into theirs, right? You're kind of counterbalancing each other. But again, what is important about all this? What is the common thread with everything here? It's all about battle line. It's all about regular standard troops and objective control. And battle line units have generally the best objective control in every army. Obviously, you're going to have a few elite units or things that are just kind of like really hard to break bricks. But the battle line units are your easiest, cheapest way to get objective control. And again, you can take 6 of every one of them instead of 3. So for example, orcs, you can take 6 orc boy squads and 6 orc beast naga squads. Now, if you do the dread mob detachment, you can also take 6 Gretchen squads because they become battle line as well. And that might be a sneaky way to really do well in Pariah Nexus, even though the dread mob itself doesn't have the best rules or isn't the strongest of detachments, is by having 3 different squads with battle line, 3 different squads that have good objective control. You can control the game better than your opponents. Now, Imperial Guard are going to be massively good in this, even though they don't have a codex yet and they're still on index, because they have access to so many battle line units. You have your regular box standard infantry squad, you have your Cadian infantry squad, you have your Catachan squad, right? That regiment has their own squad as well, along with Death Corps of Kree. And with the new Ashtamel Terra models that are going to eventually be coming out with the Codex, who knows how many more they're going to add to it. But already they have a huge selection of battle line units that are very, very, very cheap on points, very useful. Again, you can kit them out with all sorts of heavy weapons, assault weapons, power swords and power fists and things like that on the sergeants. They're just going to be really, really good. And then obviously your Space Marines. Space Marines are going to be incredibly effective. You've got your incursors, your infiltrators, your regular honk and intercessors, and then you've got the old school firstborn ones with your tactical squad. They have a lot of options. I don't know if scouts are battle line anymore these days, but yeah, I know some things, again, depend on which detachment you take. So the long and the short of it is, it doesn't matter what army you play, you should be investing heavily in your basic troop squads. You should be going back to old school 3rd edition when you start building out your your force for these games and going, okay, do I have some troops? Do I have 2 troops in an HQ? Right? You're going to take your warlord and then a couple of Battleline units before you do literally anything else. That is going to make a lot of the builds that were very competitive in Leviathan and make them not competitive. It just really is. And frankly, I think that's a good thing. The whole point of 40K, the meat and the potatoes of it, from 3rd edition on, has always been about your army. It's been about having squads and squads and squads of your army backed up by elite infantry and vehicles and tanks and heroes and things like that. But the bulk of the army was still those core units. Like, if you were a Space Marine player, you were taking tactical squads. Like, that's just what it was. That is the bulk of your force. They're the ones doing most of the work. They're the ones doing these objective controls and missions and things like that. And it always has been that way. And it was really frustrating to go away from that and have these armies that were like, oh, I've got 3 Stompas, and a mech boy picking his nose, and that's my army. Like, yeah, it's kind of cool sometimes. But there were a lot of armies that were like that were very beard hammery and just not very good to play against and didn't fit the theme of what Warhammer 40,000 is. I mean, all the artwork, all the everything is, basic dudes. From then to now, it's still the basic dudes. That's what it's all about. So this moving back to it is really good from an old graybeard's perspective, but I think it's going to make the game far more enjoyable, and it's going to make it, frankly, a little bit more accessible, because let's face it, the cheapest, money-wise kits that are out there are all your basic troop kits, and all of your like combat patrols and your big battle force boxes and things like that always include your good old-fashioned Battleline units, your troops units. So they are also the most cost-effective to buy, and I would much rather see that than a whole bunch of Hero Hammer again. All right, that's enough waffling for this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Before we take off, I do want to say thank you to each and every one of you that responded to the last video where I talked about being the Bits Lord and getting ready for the Tacoma Open. Had a bunch of new signups to Patreon, and I sincerely thank each and every one of you, as well as another bit order and a couple of t-shirt orders and things like that. So yeah, I'm going to keep pushing hard and doing everything I can to bring you a whole perspective from the Tacoma Open on what it's like to go to a grand tournament. I've never been. This is a complete first for me, and it will probably be a first for a lot of you as well, and it's something that I think is really exciting. So if you want to support that at all, there's definitely all sorts of ways to do that, linked down in the description below. And of course, you can always support your favorite YouTubers by just watching videos, clicking some buttons, throwing some comments out there, sharing videos, throwing a browser up and having it play a playlist while you're not even around. Every single one of those things helps every single content creator on YouTube, and we all really appreciate it. All right, that's going to do it for this one. We'll catch you in the next video, and you guys know what's left. It's time to walk on! You see, back in the heady edition of the heady